Hello everyone, I'm Tom Baladi, the most famous person you've never heard of. Welcome back to my blog. Today I'm going to be talking to you about my father's connection within the criminal organization well known as the mob. Because of my father's involvement with the mob is the reason why he was able to get a lot of these things done. Not just anyone with 10 grand can just walk up to a municipality and get them to do whatever it is that you want them to. You gotta have an in within that criminal organization, someone that these people work with, someone maybe that they even owe favors to. And at the time, my father was involved in the criminal organization. He was not a made man. He's not Italian. Despite my last name, probably a lot of you think I'm Italian, but that's not the case. He was a fence, a pimp, and a drug dealer, and a mule for the Gambino crime family. In Louisiana, Carlos Marcello was the mob boss. The mob bosses in New York were Paul Castellano, and his underboss was Thomas Baladi. No relation. Thomas Baladi spelled his name B-A-L-A-T-I, and my last name is spelled B-A-L-A-D-I. And it was probably because of that coincidence of the name is why my father did well with them in the criminal organization. And he also sold out of his storefront whatever was hijacked off of the back of the truck. Now, the fence is a very important part to the criminal organization. When they have stolen goods, they're not worth anything unless you can actually sell them and liquidate them. And stolen goods are hard to get rid of without them leading back to you. That's why the fence is very important. He takes these things on commission, sells them, he takes a profit and gives you a profit in return, lowering the risk factor for the criminal organization. On top of being a fence, my father had a large building. He was also a pimp and a drug dealer. Stay, Mule. Stay. No, stay there. Stay, Mule. You're the worst. Alright, sorry about that. Where was I? And he was successful with them, and he probably was even more successful in the long run than a lot of the made men that he worked with. Shortly after Tony and I were in New York, it wasn't long until my father started to use us for the purpose of why he needed us, and that was as decoys for when he was running cocaine from Miami to New York. Excuse me. At the time, I didn't know that was what's going on. I just know that these were road trips. We went on a lot of them, from Florida to New York. At least once a month. And it was always the same house, the same area. Stay for a night or two, bang, on the way back. They were a fun road trip. At the time, I didn't know that we were smuggling cocaine from Florida to New York. I just, thought we were having these nice little road trips. But when you remember things that happened and you grow up and you know what is what, you can basically put the pieces together. One time, I walked into a room where my father was with the homeowner of the house. And he had a metal screen, and he had a torch in the other hand. And there was this little white rock on the middle of the metal screen. He took the torch to it, just tapped it on it, and it pretty much melted away right away. You see how fast it dissipates? He says to my father. And, he didn't say anything. He just responded with a big shake of his body and a smile on his face. I didn't really know what was going on. I just, happened to walk in on that, and I they catch me and they just escort me out of the room and tell me to leave. And I leave. And go play out in the yard. And didn't think anything of it. But because of this crazy memory I have, you can coincide with what my father did. I obviously was a drug dealer. I saw loads of drugs in his office. Always had a triple beam set up on the desk table that he had. Huge safe, and a lot of times the drugs weren't even in the safe. They were always handy to get to in these large, like a pickle jar. Always 2 different powders I saw in there. 2 different pickle jars. 2 different white powders. I imagine one was cocaine and the other one was heroin. When my brother and I lived with my mother, she always had lots of toys for us to play with. Boys love their toys. It doesn't change even when you get older. Trust me, I still love my toys. Now they're just more expensive and bigger and they can kill me. One day, Tony and I were up in the park playing with our chips gear, and we were just doing our thing, playing in the park. And at the time, my father had a bunch of mopeds that were hijacked off the back of the truck. Had little vests, little badges, little side holsters. Back then, you can have a gun in public and as a toy and play with it and not get shot. Don't really know what's changed. People are still people, but you can't have toy guns without getting shot these days. But enough about that. And we would play with the stuff in the park, but we couldn't take our toys home because then George would know that we have toys, and he would know that we took money from him, and the outcome wouldn't be good. So we had to hide our toys in the park. We lived just up the block from the park. Oh, actually, we lived just down the block from the park, Sunset Park. Our house was on 42nd Street and 8th Avenue, Brooklyn. And the park is Sunset Park, and the pool is right up the block. And we're in the front of the park, and at the time, my father was selling mopeds out of the store because that was what was hijacked off of the back of the truck. Mopeds. So he's riding one of them around in the park, and he sees me and Tony. And he sees we've got these toys. Wondering where we got them from. And so, we're quiet. We're not saying anything. He counts his money. Obviously, he knows we took it and we bought toys for ourselves with the money that we stole from him. He takes us to the toy store where we bought them at, and he's trying to get them to take back the toys that we bought from them. But they're not in their box. They're not in their wrapper. He and I are wearing them, and he refuses to take them back. And he's just, as soon as we're leaving the store, he starts slapping the hell out of me and Tony. Tony doesn't have any shoes on for whatever reason, and he steps on a piece of glass on the way home. Big cut on his foot. George doesn't let up. Just keeps smacking him around, pushing him along while he's limping with a big cut foot. And then we get back to the house. He calls my mother. Says to her, "Do you know what your kids just did? They stole $100 from me and went and bought toys." And my mother, not really thinking much of what might be the consequences of pissing this narcissistic sociopath with no impulse control. And she basically just told him the truth, if you bought them toys to begin with, they wouldn't be stealing your money. That's not what he wanted to hear. And it just sent him off the rails. And yeah, this is hard for me to talk about, but I feel that I need to tell this because I want to paint the picture of who this person is, and again, this is about overcoming things. And you see me here talking to you right now. Again, I told you the first intro of this whole thing, how I am a happy person, and I've had a good life. I've had a good head on my shoulders, and but we've had our ups and downs. Everyone has their demons, and the thing is, knowing what those demons are and being conscious of it. We all go through our moments of woe is me, but after your moments of, mourning, snap out of it. Get back on with your life. Life goes on, all right? And it's all about what we make of it. You. And if you have a low opinion of yourself, there's not really much people out there that are going to raise that opinion. Keep your feet to the ground. Don't be all in the clouds and full of yourself, but at the same time, always have confidence in yourself. So with that little speech, hopefully give myself a little bit of strength to explain what exactly happened after my father got off the phone with my mother. Came out of his office with a little 38 stub-nose pistol and a bar stool. Sat down in the bar stool and he made me and Tony get down on our knees in front of him. He threw a belt to the ground and he made us whip each other. Now, we tried to do it lightly, of course, but he was right there with that gun yelling harder, harder, and his saliva coming out of his mouth. And Tony and I were forced to take turns whipping each other with a belt while he had a gun to us. During that time, one of the people that lived on the block came over to pick up some drugs. Tony and I are still sitting there on our knees while he comes in. He sees what's going on. We're bursting. Obviously, we're both crying, just sitting there on our knees. He's awkward, just sitting there with a smile on his face, and George takes him into the office. He does his drug deal, leaves, never really saying anything, questioning, hey, what's going on with these kids? What are you doing? Just there for the drugs. Leaves, awkward smile on his face as he walks past me and Tony. And then that continued for a little bit. And that was, I'd like to say that was kind of the worst of it with the things that we went through, but it necessarily wasn't. And another thing is, when you're very young and you're going through these things and they're pretty consistent, that's the normal for you. You feel that, because you don't know what else to compare it to. You're so young and life is so new to you, and this is your normal now. And you just learn to adjust and live with that abuse. It's just, and that's kind of a way that a lot of people get trapped into certain relationships like that. But when you're a kid and that's just your everyday life, it toughens your skin. And there's two things that can happen when you're a part of that. You can either become the same part of that, or you rise above. There's no touches of gray or in-betweens into that. It's either you're good or you're done. Unfortunately, I'm good. Everybody have a good one. Thank you.